All right, welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Friday, June the 7th, 2024, 6/7/24. If you're taking notes, it's the 159th day of the year, the first of 4 Fridays this month, which means that economists and Wall Street are digesting this morning's jobs report. The Labor Department's big non-farm payroll report showing a much better than expected 272,000 jobs being added to the economy in the month of May. The expectation was for 180,000 jobs. Again, the analysts got it wrong. Although the unemployment rate rose from 3.9% to 4%. Again, 272,000 jobs added, smashing the expectation of 180,000. Although the stock markets are in the red for some reason. Today is also National Chocolate Ice Cream Day, which I will be celebrating later for sure, and National Donut Day, which you may have already celebrated this morning. Both great days for a Friday. On yesterday's Newsmax Daily, I said President Biden's trip to France couldn't have come at a better time because the headlines here in the States were not good, referencing the Wall Street Journal and Time magazine reports that we discussed yesterday on his cognitive abilities, right? Well, today, his cognitive ability demonstrated at the D-Day ceremony in France yesterday is the headline around the world.
And on a day when the free Western democratic world was supposed to be saying to the globe, hey, we did it before, and you know what, we're still strong enough to do it again. Well, I'm afraid Joe Biden came up short. Here's a few highlights or lowlights of his performance at D-Day. Where do we begin?
That is Sky News Australia, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and in Italy, where they have been brutally critical of President Biden for a long time.
Buonasera, Presidente Biden. Oh, Presidente Biden. President, Mr. President.
So I played some of President Biden's speech yesterday, and you're going to hear bits and pieces of it in the upcoming segments as well, so I'm not going to play it now. On Rob Schmitt Tonight, Rob did a deep comparison on Ronald Reagan's speech in Normandy on the 40th anniversary of D-Day and President Biden's speech on the 80th anniversary yesterday.
Joe Biden showed himself to be a sad substitute for Ronald Reagan. He frankly looked geriatric, trying to sit too early during the opening parts of the ceremony, as you saw there. Biden's speech attempted to compare Russia's invasion of Ukraine with the Nazis' assault on all of Western Europe. That is quite a stretch, conflating France and the UK with Ukraine here in the United States. But lately, every political maneuver for Biden is a desperate stretch. Here's how he sounded today.
We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? My answer is yes.
So if you listen to the speech today, you notice one of the many differences between Biden and Reagan's speeches was that Biden made no plea at all for peace, like you heard from Reagan in the opening soundbite of this monologue. Biden's speech mirroring his agendas, his administration's agenda, offering no off-ramps at all to another endless war. Reagan said he would offer more than reconciliation with the Soviet Union if they could just cool things down and get out of this thing. And Reagan would lead the United States toward an eventual peaceful ending to the decades-long Cold War. It's a couple years later. That kind of reasonable policy does not exist in the Biden war machine cabinet. There's never been interest in a peaceful resolution to Ukraine, and we've seen that time and time again. Today, Biden attempted to showcase himself as a Reagan-esque fighter for freedom and Trump as a dangerous isolationist. From an article in Politico, Biden and aides have also adapted Reagan's peace through strength mantra to describe their own foreign policy approach in working to strengthen alliances. To even attempt to describe this White House as strength shows the absolute level of delusion that we are dealing with right now. Portraying Trump as dangerous on foreign policy is equally as deluded. Trump's tough stance as he ran this country for 4 years led to billions more in NATO spending and a stronger Europe and a stronger world, at least Western world. His aggressive posture kept our adversaries quiet for 4 years. The world, though, is now on fire under Joe Biden, who's seeing a bumbling old man who again today was so ill-prepared and exhausted that he started reading the cues in the teleprompter again. Take a listen.
Winston Churchill called what happened here, quote, the greatest, most complicated operation ever, end of quote.
End of quote. And it wouldn't be a Biden speech without some insufferable pandering to race and gender as well, as we heard right here.
All were backed by other brave Americans, including hundreds of thousands of people of color and women who courageously served despite unjust limitations on what they could do for their nation.
It's so embarrassing to listen to, especially at that forum. Unjust limitations, manufacturing problems again, cultural Marxism in a speech meant to defy Russia. The irony of that. Biden today looked, frankly, really old, really unfit. Yet another picture of American weakness on the world stage that we didn't need to show.
That's Rob Schmitt, host of Rob Schmitt Tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. And Ed Henry spoke with rock music legend and patriot Ted Nugent.
Uncle Ted, Ted Nugent. Uncle Ted, welcome, sir.
Yes, same to you, Ed, and a solemn D-Day to you and everybody out there.
It certainly is. And, you know, Joe Biden was actually alive, no joke, during D-Day. That's how old he is. But today, he looked barely alive. I mean, some of these guys hobbling around at 103 who served us so well, he looked worse than they did. They look like they're in better shape, my friend.
Well, clearly it has nothing to do with numbers or age. I mean, I'm 76 this year, and I'm out rocking any teenager you can find. The point being is I spent some time with a survivor of the Bataan Death March. He was in his hundreds. I spent time with a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. His name is Sammy Davis. He's something. I got a lot of buddies that are in their 90s. I actually spent the day at Campfire Sunrise Safaris with Herb Ellison, who just passed away last week, and he was a survivor of Pearl Harbor. And these guys are cocked, locked, and ready to rock the Glock around the clock. They have a great conversation. They're guys. They're buoyant. They get out there. They help me crack hogs and gut hogs and turn them into family-sized portions. So it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with condition. Our commander-in-chief, which I can't believe we referenced this freak as the commander-in-chief. What an embarrassing time, especially from the point of view of the heroes that drag their buddies off the battlefield. They are angry and heartbroken, really embarrassed that Joe Biden is under the heading commander-in-chief. He's feeble. He's not mentally fit. I think he's mentally deranged. He deserves no respect. And it really doesn't matter what age he is. He's just a bad guy.
And he politicized this occasion. He attacked Donald Trump. And here's what else he had to say. Watch.
We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. They've inflicted on the Russian aggressors, they've suffered tremendous losses, Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded.
Celebrating Russians who have been killed as we're trying to honor Americans who gave their all to preserve our freedom, Ted. And the idea that he's talking about threats to democracy when he's trying to jail his political opponent. And now Merrick Garland at the DOJ is saying Steve Bannon's going to prison by July 1st. Your thoughts?
Well, again, I won't even bother wasting anybody's time with my thoughts. I talked to some guys from the Delta Force, some U.S. Marines, some Green Berets, some Navy SEALs. What they think is that this man is a traitor. He's guilty of treason. He does literally give more credit to our enemies. He's inviting our enemies in from all enemy territories through our open borders. So this is an embarrassing time. We've tried to maintain a focus on the incredible sacrifices that have been made for this American dream and the greatest quality of life in the history of the world. If anybody is jeopardizing democracy or freedom or America itself, it's Joe Biden and the Democrats and his gang. These are bad, bad people. I take an oath to the Constitution as a cop for the last 39 years. I'm watching the commander-in-chief violate that sacred constitutional oath, every day, every time he opens his mouth. He's a bad man, and the people that support him are even worse because they know he's feeble, they know he's a treason, they know he's dishonest, you know that it's all lawfare, and they still pretend to support him when they're actually supporting the toilet flushing of America. So I'm going to celebrate the heroes that sacrificed for my freedom today, and I'm going to continue to fight to get these treasonous monster devils in the White House out of the way so we can get back to freedom with the great Donald Trump.
Ted Nugent, thank you, sir.
And on Ted Nugent's cue, let's go to Arizona, where former President Donald Trump, the Republican for president, spoke at a Turning Point USA event in Phoenix.
What the hell happened to him today? It's always an adventure. He falls out of airplanes, he falls out of helicopters. What the hell is going on? But because of Biden's policies, millions and millions of children have been separated from their families and pushed into the hands of the coyotes and the cartels. And 88,000, I don't know if you do, if it were me, it would be the biggest story. 88,000 children are missing. You know that 88,000, think of that. 88,000 children are missing under this administration, and they have no idea. And unfortunately, many of those children are dead. Just like many of the hostages held by Hamas are dead. When they can't make a deal, when they can't make a deal, that's a big problem. And they're finding out that a lot of them are gone. A lot of these people are gone right now. But there's a thing, again, it never would have happened. October 7th, Israel, the attack on Israel, would have never, ever happened under the Trump administration. When I'm president, I will use Title 42 to end the trial, and we have to do this, to end the child trafficking crisis by returning all trafficked children to their families in their home countries, and we will do it immediately. Have to do it. We will save countless women and children from slavery and servitude. When you talk about all of the people that are essentially kidnapped, it's another word for it, most of them are actually women. Most of them, they put them in trunks of cars. They have cells built in cars. They close, it's 100 degrees out, it's 115 degrees out. They put women in that to try and sneak them across the border. And they can do it very easily because the borders, we have an open border into our country. But most of those people are, just think of yourself, think of your family. Most of them are women. The Biden border invasion is also an all-out war on the working-class minorities of our country, and it's a flat-out economic warfare on African-American and Hispanic-American families and workers.
Trump, of course, spoke about the border, the cartels, fentanyl, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and more, and then did something that Joe Biden would never do or could never do.
And now, we're going to do something a little different. You think Biden does this? If they ask him one question, he just leaves. They ask him one question. No, we're gonna take some questions. We don't do this often because it gets a little bit sloppy, I must say. But they look like nice people. But whatever question you'd like to ask, it can be a horrible, embarrassing, vicious question, or it could be quite nice. I don't care personally. Because it's called, we answer you. You ask a question, we answer the question. Yes, darling, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for taking the time to answer this question. I am a mother, a wife, and a woman. And I also foster and adopt kids. Growing up near the border, I've seen firsthand how an unsecure border has impacted my family and our community. I worry about the illegal drugs being brought into our community and what could happen to my children. What steps can be taken to reduce the drugs being brought into the country as well, and safety and well-being of families and the community?
Thank you, darling. Good. Very good question. It's a very basic question. It's a little bit what we've been talking about, but it's going to be at a level that we have never seen in this country. Even as good as I did, I created the safest border in history. We're going to make it so good. All Biden had to do is let the people stay there, keep the same policies. We wouldn't even be talking about this as an issue. And I think in a certain way, it's just one of the truly big issues. We're going to make our border very powerful, very strong. We're going to stop drugs from coming in. We're going to stop this whole thing with human trafficking, which is a big part of your question. And we're going to make your homeland safe for you to stay with your family, where thousands of people aren't pouring in and looking through your windows. And what they're doing here in Texas, and by the way, the governor of Texas has done a very good job of closing it up. But here they haven't done that. They haven't done that. And in California, they haven't. 82% of the people are coming in now through California, Arizona. So we're going to have to close it up. We're going to close it up. We're going to use federal powers to close it up. Thank you, darling, very much. Good question. Yes, sir. You're a good-looking guy. Look at that guy. Looks like a banker from Wall Street.
You can see I'm an old man, and I have grandchildren that I want to see taken care of.
Right.
And I love them, and I want them to know that they can have the same life that I have had.
Oh, it's very nice.
What are you going to do about that?
We're going to make sure that they have the same. You know, I mean, I could just see how incredible you are by the emotion of that and the way you asked the question. We're going to make sure they have the same life that you had or better. We're going to make it safe. We have to give authority back to law enforcement so they can properly protect people, because right now the law enforcement is just not allowed to do their job because crime is so bad. Crime is so bad in the cities. And one of the things I said is we're giving immunity. We're going to guarantee people. You know, they lose a law enforcement person. They go and stop people from robbing stores. You go to some of these department stores where 500 people walk into the stores. They walk out with air conditioning. They strip the whole store. The company goes out of business. The store is vacant for 25 years. The whole city becomes a slum. And if you do anything as a law enforcement person, they take away your house. They take away your family. They take away your pension. We're going to make it so that we're going to give them essentially immunity. We're going to make it that they are not going to be losing their pensions. They're going to be able to do their job. And we're going to get life back to where I know exactly the life that you're talking about. It was a life of common sense. It was a life where there was no crime. There was nobody getting bopped over the head when they weren't looking, getting pushed into a railroad train or a subway. It's just horrible what's taking place. It's horrible. It's evil. We're going to get it back to common sense. We're going to have law and order. Thank you. Great question. Thank you. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, President Trump, for coming down. We really do appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
I'm in the unique position of having two children that are in their 30s and a set of girls in there that are teenagers. I know what I did have to do with the 30-year-olds. I know what I now have to do with the teenagers. I have trackers on those girls, and I've taught them evasive action when driving through our county because of the high-speed pursuits of the human trafficking.
Who would believe you have to even think about doing that, right?
Never with the original two.
Yeah, no, I know that.
How would you handle the criminal activity that is running rampant because of this open border? Because all of this is from this open border.
Okay.
As you can see, especially in Phoenix, right? There were a lot of questions about the border and about crime. And this went on for a good 25 minutes or so. He didn't just take, 2 or 3 questions. And he encouraged voters to get out and vote big.
Let me tell you, if we could have honest elections in this country, I would have stopped campaigning 2 weeks ago. We would have had it made. But we don't have that, so we're watching it very carefully, and I'm working my ass off to make sure we get too big to rig. Too big. We want to be too big to rig. There gets to be a point where they can't rig it, so we have an expression. Charlie and I were just talking. It's called too big to rig.
Trump speaking at the Turning Point USA event in Phoenix yesterday. This weekend, Trump has a rally planned for Las Vegas at Sunset Park, according to the website, which I believe is an outdoor, well, it is an outdoor park. And man, I hope they have a covered stage or an amphitheater, something inside that park, because if it's going to be outside, it is very hot. It will be carried live on Newsmax Sunday afternoon, so be sure to check it out. If you've been paying attention, you know there was more reporting by multiple outlets yesterday on Trump's upcoming vice presidential pick, right? Let's wrap up today's daily with more on this from Carl Higbie.
If we need somebody who doesn't put on a flannel shirt to go to Idaho, a suit to go to Manhattan, and then like boat shoes with no socks to go to Martha's Vineyard, it has to be someone who is totally comfortable with exactly who they are, for better, for worse, that doesn't kowtow to special interests or pander to whatever group. Trump's VP candidate, for lack of better terms, needs to give approximately 0 Fs. So who's on the list? Let's start with what I think is the most vanilla candidate. Okay, Senator Marco Rubio. Now, this is probably going to be a problem for him right here.
Little Marco.
Because everybody knows him as that now. Look, he's run for president, he knows the game, but he's also from Florida, and you typically don't have the president and the vice president from the same state. But look, I think Senator Rubio is right on most of his policies. I actually like the guy personally. I just don't think he connects with people the same way Trump does, which I realize is a super high bar, but that bar has been set. Could Marco Rubio walk onto a stage and win a primary against some of the other people on Trump's list? I don't know. Or even win a debate against someone like Matt Gaetz? Could he out-debate, I don't know, Dan Bongino, Megyn Kelly, some of the people that are really good at it? I don't think so. He just doesn't suck the energy out of the room and shine the spotlight on himself like some of the other people. And not to dog the guy. Like I said, I like him. I think he's good at governing. I just don't think he has enough flame. And here's another one, Dr. Ben Carson, another guy, ran for president, held a cabinet position under Trump, did a fantastic job, and he can debate.
I was asked by an NPR reporter once, why don't I talk about race that often? I said, it's because I'm a neurosurgeon. And she thought that was a strange response. And I said, you see, when I take someone to the operating room, I'm actually operating on the thing that makes them who they are. The skin doesn't make them who they are.
Yeah, nailed that one. Look, I personally have immeasurable respect for the guy. I know him personally. And one of the greatest brain surgeons of probably his generation. His story is perfect. Raised on a library card where his mother made him read books while she was working multiple jobs to keep a roof over their heads. You literally cannot get a better success story in the United States of America than this guy. But he's just not entertaining. And if Trump has showed us anything, you have to be an entertainer so the media will cover you. It's like energy begets energy. He has not also demonstrated the ability to get elected. He's the only one on this short list who's never been elected to public office before. And I realize that's not a qualification because obviously Trump never was, but there is a process that you go through to understand how that works. Trump's an anomaly. He's not the norm. I mean, that's a critical part of it, especially if you're going to be the top of the ticket in 4 years. Here's another one. Senator Tim Scott. Great story. Again, votes the conservative line. Pretty captivating on stage. And he has a rags to riches stories. He's also from a strategic state, South Carolina. But could he pick up the mantle in 4 years and run with it? I imagine he probably could, but I'm not 100% convinced yet. And maybe that's on me. Maybe that's me just not knowing enough about him. But he's certainly a viable contender, more viable than I think Marco Rubio. Now, Senator J.D. Vance, newly elected senator from Ohio. Here's what he's going to face. He was a never-Trumper at one point, who then garnered Trump's endorsement, won his election, and now has become a staunch supporter of the president. Even on some of the more controversial issues, he stands up. He doesn't care. He takes all kinds of arrows for the guy now, which is good. I'm here for that. Because if you're a convert from hating Trump to now, convincing others to get in Trump camp, you're going to be very good at it because you understand both sides. But you also know how to compete for votes in a much more mild faction of the Republican Party. So that could be very powerful. He's a top contender.
That's Carl Higbie, who is right. Trump's vice presidential pick has to be somebody capable of winning the presidency in 2028. But I don't agree with Carl that it has to be someone who's just like Trump. Mike Pence was the complete opposite of Trump, and the Trump-Pence administration was very, very successful. You may not like the way it ended, but it was very successful. Then there is the guy that I pointed out as a rising Republican star several months ago, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, who obviously is also from Florida, if you agree with Carl's whole same state thing that he mentioned about Marco Rubio.
Personally, I do know him a little bit. I really like this dude, and here is a perfect example why.
Are you worried about retribution after the fact? There was threats that folks that weren't going to vote for McCarthy would be kicked off committees. Now you've put yourself in a pretty public position opposing the person that could be the speaker. Are you worried about retribution?
Man, I'm 6'2", 275. I'm not worried about that.
Yes. I love this. This guy doesn't back down. He speaks very plainly. He is the most similar to Trump in his delivery, in his convictions, and in his politics. Unfortunately, he's also from Florida, but I also see him as the strongest VP candidate and future presidential candidate. And let's be honest, he's also black, which in fact will hurt the Democrats' attacks on Trump because they're always, the one go-to they have is, Trump's a racist. Well, if his VP is black, you can't say that. He would be my first pick, actually. Another big name floated out, Congresswoman from New York, Elise Stefanik. She's the fourth highest ranking Republican and has recently been a very strong supporter of Trump.
Last week's verdict in New York shows how corrupt, rigged, and un-American the weaponized justice system has become under Joe Biden and Democrats.
Look, I love most of her politics. I think most of the MAGA base does too. However, is she likable enough to run for the top office in 4 years? That's going to be the big question. She's also from New York, which means it's highly unlikely she's even going to win her own state. And I make fun of Kamala Harris for not winning. She got polled at like 1% in her own state in a primary all the time. So I have to apply that standard across the board.
And the last potential pick, at least for now, is billionaire North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, who ran for president, if you remember. Most people don't know much about him, but we didn't know that much about Mike Pence either until Trump picked him. A person of color would be a big plus, I agree with Carl, for a variety of reasons, if it is the right person, if they have the qualifications, not only because they are a person of color, like some of the unqualified people in the Biden administration. I do like Byron Donalds. I really like Byron Donalds. I also like Marco Rubio, a Cuban American. Picking a woman would be awesome, but I don't think Elise Stefanik is the right pick for a variety of reasons, beginning with, is she strong enough to win in 2028? Meanwhile, President Biden remains in France, where he met with, of all people, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. All in the backdrop of remembering D-Day and the heroes of D-Day. Biden apparently apologized to Zelensky for the delay in U.S. aid, blaming Republicans for holding up the $61 billion aid package. Biden meets with French President Emmanuel Macron tomorrow before heading back home. Make sure you keep up with all of the news all day today and this weekend on Newsmax. Don't forget about Wake Up America Weekend Edition, Saturday and Sundays beginning at 7. Newsmax is available on most major cable systems, as you know, and make sure you're streaming the new Newsmax Plus. If you are not, simply go to newsmaxplus.com, get signed up. You can also get a free trial. It includes all of your favorite shows and hosts. Rob Schmitt Tonight, Greg Kelly Reports, Greta Van Susteren with The Record, Carl Higbie on Frontline, Wake Up America, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Share it with your friends and families. Have a fantastic and safe weekend doing whatever it is you love to do. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. News Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home, on the free Newsmax app. They go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.